Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Book to Block, the series where I bring my fantasy novel to life in Minecraft, one block at a time. In the last episode, I worked on this marketplace here, along with the wall you can see behind me. And then over here, I still haven't gotten a good idea as of time of recording this for this stall here. So if you have any ideas, please leave a comment and maybe it can be included in here. But in today's episode, we're going to be working on the tavern. So I used to have the nameplate here and the little marking. I removed it and kind of adjusted the terrain a little bit just for in prep of this video. So let's get started on building that. Alright, so here I am on the outskirts where my little planning area is for this video. So I've already started to make a little outline of what I want the tavern to look like. So I want this to kind of be like the little entrance hall and then have a large area. The reason why I've got an empty space here is because the wall on the outskirts kind of goes along here. So I can't square off the building. Plus, you never want to have it too squared off for everything. Having a little bit of a odd side can add a lot of character to your build. So usually when you build something like this, you could just quickly draw a line like that. But that's not going to be exactly even as you want it. Thankfully, Axiom has this smear tool over here, the pointed arrow up, that you can use for something like this. So how I used it is you left and right click on one of these points, and then while looking you can scroll, and you can bring it out like this. And then once you get it to this, so it's in line with this, then you scroll in this direction, and as you can see it starts to draw the line directly from that point to wherever you're selected. So if you drag it over to your other point, now you've got a good line that's not too uneven in any other way. So then right click to confirm, and now I've got that side of the wall of the tavern. Alright, so kind of after getting your shape of your build, you can start looking at the materials you're going to use. So as you can see, I've started adding these wooden posts of the oak logs, and intervals with 5 blocks in between each of these. And then for this side, it's a little bit more difficult. You kind of have to play around with it as it gets built up. So after that, I'm going to start using the palette that I use over here. So it's going to be mostly the oak woods and then the cobblestones. I'm going to forget about the hay for this one since it's more of a built-up building. So it'll be more of a wooden roof instead of the thatched roof that I mentioned in the last episode. So we'll go and then we'll add in the cobblestone like this. And there we go. So now we have kind of the outline of it. Then we bring everything up around here. So if I can do that in real time, go that point and then to over here. So if I use the stack command in this area, so that grabs everything in this area, but I don't want it to grab the ground. So if I look up and scroll a couple times, messing up the door a little bit, but we're starting to get build up a little. So we'll go a couple more. Confirm. Fix up these doors. Got a couple hanging around. And this is starting to look like the shape I'm thinking of having for the build. Alright, so the next thing I did is I brought these little log pieces up a little bit higher for each one. And then over here for the single blocks, so the ones that doesn't have two, I turned those into the posts. And then I connected everything with a line of logs, kind of connecting each one. When you're coming to these bits, it's a 5x5 area, so you don't want it to be too squared off. So using some stairs, a slab, and then a trapdoor, you can add a little bit of a curve into each of these, and that can be added to each of these. A quick way of doing that is using the clone tool. So if I just grab this to here, I can scroll this over, and then once it's lined up, right click, and then you can do it again, right click, and again. And now for this one, if you hold Control R, you can then drag this over and it rotates it nicely. Now it's in here. Alright, now for a little bit more trapdoor detail. So for this, I kind of just went like this and then that, just for each one. And that kind of just ties it together a little bit better. And then for the front door here, I moved the doors back a bit. And now if you go here, I'm holding space and shift so I can click all these up quickly. It'll make sense in a second. Now if I close, don't need these ones. If I close up these. Remove all these extra placed ones. Now that looks like a nicer door inset, so it looks a little bit more texture and depth to the build. Alright, now that we've got a little bit more of the detail done, we can go in here and work on the floor. So this is kind of the space. It's nice and open, so I can split it off for, since it's tavern, I'll have a nice bar in here, maybe a kitchen in the back corner, plenty of seating area, and then maybe an area to go into the second floor. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this floor using the extrude tool. But I'm going to shrink like that, gets rid of all the grass in the area because it's all the same block. Then I'm going to hop over into the axiom menu with the right shift and use the flood fill tool, the one I used for when I was making the first lake for the waterfall. But for this time, we're going to use the oak planks. So if you see here, it selects everything in the area without going outside. So I right click and you have an instant floor. For bits under like this, if you don't want it to delete, you can turn on the replace function and it just replaces them and it doesn't affect the blocks on top of it. So now that we have the foundations for the first floor done, we can start working on the second floor. So for this, I wanted to have sort of a little balcony. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I want it to match up like this. And then I can add this in, so I'm going to use the expand from the extrude. You can just kind of come around like this, or you can use the stack tool, select like this, and you can just scroll to fill in like this. And then over here, and then again for this side. So we're going to scroll all the way to the back. And this is going to be like a little patio on top, but you need to add in your structural support. So I'm going to do it like this, so it's connected to each of these. Skip over so it's slightly larger because the front door here. That's that one. And then we go around to this side. So now we have this, we can adjust these. So I'm going to bring everything in this area up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks total. So then if I click like that, this is getting ready for the second floor. I'm also going to add in this bit to fill in this area. So for this, it's kind of the balcony. Over here will be the lakefront, so it'll be a nice area to sit and enjoy a meal or a drink and look over the lake. But for this top bit, I'm going to change the block palette, so I'm not going to use the cobblestone again. I'm going to use mud bricks. I just think the color palette works really well, so I'm going to go inlay it again, sort of like this. And then we just bring it along. A quick way of doing it, just do this and then quick scroll. And then you can do the same, or you can use the extrude tool. Pop it up real quick. Maybe not that high, because we want it to, again, so we have a 5 by 5 again. So I'll grab the stack tool again, over here, bring it over. So you're kind of getting a look at the two-tier building starting. And then, since you don't want it to be an edge like this, we can grab a fence. Then you can go in the dark oak. And you can go along the edge like this. A nice quick way of doing it is this top left here, fast place. That does it really quickly. A couple of little mistakes, but it can speed up your process. You could also use the clone tool again, like I mentioned earlier. So I'll go over here. I can just grab like that. Quick placements into each of the spots. Alright, so I added back into like the same at the bottom. I added the logs along on the back side here. It kind of outsticks a little bit, so it's kind of the same as the bottom, just brought up. I'm using the wood instead of the logs to kind of make it look more like a diagonal log, so it doesn't have the edge exposed looking like it's just a bunch of tiny little ones. kind of gives the illusion of it all being one log in that diagonal direction. So now that we have that, we can add in the second floor. So for this, I'm going to use the extrude tool. I'm going to set myself up in this tiny little corner back, and then just click a bunch. As you can see, it's starting to fill up the sides there, but doesn't go outside the build there. So you can make a quick floor like this. And then I'm going to do this so I don't miss any. And now we have the first floor done. Now it's kind of dark in here, but if I turn off my shaders, I have a full bright so that I can build however I need and see everything. Now if I come out to the front here, we have our floor for the second floor. Turn back on the shaders just for the better look. I also changed these to spruce fences because it blended a little bit better. While you do want a bit of a color pop sometimes just having complementary colors works just as well. Alright, now time for the roof. So what I did is I chose the center of each side. So it's going to be a little bit harder for this roof since it's not a perfect square. You can't just do a nice triangle on top. So I picked the two centers of these sides. Then you kind of want to choose the height you want your roof. I'm thinking of going a nice tall roof, kind of a nice slope for it. So then I'm going to use the smear tool again. And then just connect your 2 points up like this. So now you have just the bridge along the top. And what you can do is if you want to use, I'm going to use a different color just so it can accent quite well. So for this, I'm going to grab it like this. I want to bring it up like that. And then I'm going to attach it to this. For this, I'm going to, instead of doing it from the bottom, I'm going to use it from the top because I don't want to add any more from this. So what you can do is, since it's just 3 here, I'm going to grab these first 3, extend it over to that, and then all the way up. And that's the first one. And then the next one is 4, so that works out well here. Bring it in, lower down, confirm. And now we've got a 2. So we want to grab up. Want to make sure we place our blocks on top like this. Bring it up. And then later on we can fill in these gaps. We just keep going. Forgot to do it again. Add these on just so I don't forget anymore. And then you can go up, over, and then I'll quickly show you how this is all done. Alright, so now that we have this side done, we can come on to the inside, and then I'm just going to place blocks to cover these gaps here. For the front, it'll be a little bit easier, because it's all just the same, but I can place all the front like this. But now we just copy the same, but this one we don't have to do like 2 to here to 1. You can kind of just follow exactly. So this one's 3. And then that adds up, and we'll see what the final product looks like. So I've replaced the top bits with these spruce wood, not the log, the wood. So again, kind of like I mentioned down there, I want it to look like it's just a very long diagonal tree. And then you can start adding a little bit of detail, kind of like this. You want to just add however you think might work. For this, I'm doing kind of like pointed roofs. Since it's all right beside each other like this, you can kind of, just for a little bit more detail on the top, you can go across, have a kind of tall spike, maybe add like this. this red will be replaced with a block later on, it's just so you can see the contrast of the different type of build. We go in here, again it's dark, so I'll turn off the shaders, nice and bright. We can then go in again with a new floor. So I'll bring this, I'm going to use this quick place. Almost got all of them. And then we can go in with our extrude. Quickly bring in a new floor. And then, so you can get that one, there we go. So for this, then we can add a nice wall that'll cover this side, and that'll be most of the exterior complete. Alright, now that you've got your shape of your build, so you can see all filled in here, I've added in along this edge here so it overhangs, and then I added one on the side here just so it's a little bit more overhang on the side. So after you do this, now you can start working on texturing. So for this, it's kind of very plain on each of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, I'm going to select, so I got the cobblestone, I'm going to set a mask for it, and then I'm going to do a noise painting. So I'm going to do cobblestone, and then 2 of these coral blocks. So I've got dead horn coral and dead fire coral. So now if I go equal for all of them, I want to lower the scale, and then just paint over everything. Zoomed out a little bit too much there. Just go all the way around and paint all the cobblestone. Now you go down here. Bit more noise, looks a little bit better than just the plain cobblestone. I'm going to do the same for the mud bricks, so mask the mud bricks, and this time it's just going to be the mud bricks and then the mud itself. So packed mud and then mud bricks, so drag along there, get all along wherever it is. And that's a bit more texture. And now onto the roof. So grab the red concrete, and I'm going to use these 2. So we got that and that. So that's the gray terracotta and dark oak planks. And now I paint over this. And now that's starting to fit in a little bit better. Turn on the shaders for a bit nicer view. And then the last palette you want to work on is the floor here. So I've got these 3 here. Grab the oak planks and then drag in for these 3. So we have oak stripped logs, jungle stripped logs, and then the planks themselves. Want equal amounts. And then just go in here for the little balcony, and then zoom in onto the inside. Turn off the shaders so we can see a little bit better. Go along, down to this floor. And then one more time on the ground floor. So now we have a bit more texture. It looks a lot nicer now. Go around, see all the different sides. It's just not so plain of just a single block for each area. Alright, so now that you have your shell, your area, your exterior of your build, now you can work on detailing. So for this, I'm going to do the detailing off camera and then just kind of walk you through each little bit just to show, because it would take far too long just to show me building every single bit of detail. Showing you would just be a lot easier in this case. So let's hop over to the finished version of this build. And here we are. So I've gone around and added a bit more detail. So you can see these lights here. I've moved these trapdoors from the bottom, so it's like this, and then you add in your lanterns. It kind of skipped every so often, so it's not too much light. I've added in a little border along the outside here. So originally it was just this. Now we've got these upside down stairs and then these trapdoors. Add in buttons along top, these little log points, and then a couple of little tables with the flower pots as little mugs where you can be drinking your alcohol with a little bit of candles. Using trapdoors, I designed these tables, so it's kind of, you got the underneath of it, you can see. but it's got the support on each side. More lighting the same way, using the trapdoor with the lantern underneath. Just a quick little insert here. I came back a little bit later and I worked on this little sign here. So I'm using these entity blocks, so just some wood, some stairs, and then a bit of wool, just kind of as a little mug of ale or something. If you can think of a better idea, maybe using different types of entities, leave a comment below and I'd love to give it a shot. Just a little bit more detail added into this area. Now heading on inside, got a little entrance way. So I got some tables here, and then I kind of did a little bit of, it's kind of crown molding along the top. And now we're into the bar. So the first floor is the bar of the tavern. So just some hanging lights on these posts, a couple little tables spread out, a larger kind of like a party table here for a large group to kind of hang out together. We've got the seats up against the bar. Everyone's got their own drink, bit of lighting. Use trapdoors along the top here, just kind of accent a little bit. It's nice when they kind of line up with for the spruce ones, when they line up with this kind of chain pattern. These chairs kind of just the arms. And then if we come on over to this side, we've kind of got the employee entrance area. So it comes down to here. We've got a cellar down into the basement here for storing alcohol and other products. For now here, I don't really need too much in the basement, so I kind of left it up to your imagination. It's a black wall that could go into anything that this tavern might need. And then up here is the bulkhead, where if the tavern needs anything, you can come here, and this is how they get all their supplies. On the back here, since I didn't have the trapdoors or anything for the back, I used these spruce fences, just a little bit more detail. A nice little lamppost just for keeping an eye on the bulkhead so you can easily get into it. So now if we head back in through here, back up the stairs, and if we head up here, so we got the entrance here, now we got the stairway to the second floor. So a bit of storage, just some barrels, nice little table with a lighting. For now, the stairway to the third floor of the attic is kind of like in the basement. It's blocked off by this black because I don't really have any ideas that need to go up there, so it's kind of just a additional area that could house something else. Got a nice little table here for just sitting outside the rooms, and then now we're into kind of the in part of the tavern. So we got these different rooms, just like basic bedrooms. Got a bed, using these chiseled bookshelves kind of like just as shelves, not as the bookshelves themselves. Surrounded with the trapdoors and some barrels for storage. Each room has a kind of like a desk with some books, and then a nice little shelving unit. So these other two are very similar, just on different sides, and rotated slightly differently because of the shape of the build. And then this last room is more of a storage room. So for the inn, if they need to store things, these chiseled bookshelves look really good as just like empty shelving units. And a nice little table along here. And then coming out onto the balcony, some more tables that can kind of overlook the nice lake. It looks especially nice at night, so got the moon setting or rising in the distance. Nice look over. You can sit into these chairs, look over to the lake, and enjoy the view whilst enjoying a drink. Another pattern thing, kind of like I did for the cobblestone, mud bricks, and on the roof. For these oak wood, like kind of the supports, I mixed in the stripped spruce wood, just for a little bit more detail so it's not too uniform. Another little detail are these little windows here, so the iron bars. I use these stairs with a little 3/4 bit just for a little bit more smoothness through that, as well as up here. So since there's nothing behind, I just added a lantern with some black concrete just to simulate that there's some activity on these upper floors. One last thing that I missed is behind the bar here. So come here, we got a little storage of alcohol, nice little table for little prepping before it goes out. And then back here is the kitchen. So I kind of got a little washing area, a little bit of storage, nice table, some furnaces cooking away, a little bit of more storage, a little, not kegs over here, but more storage for like any foods or such. And then over here I've kind of got a pot of water that's boiling on the campfire here, some excess wood, and then a little hole just for the smoke to escape so we don't all suffocate in here. I use the polished stuff. It kind of looks like a kitchen-ish floor, but you don't want it to be too fancy like a checkerboard, because this is still kind of like a medieval fantasy world. So you got to be careful with what blocks you choose for that. And that is it for the tavern build. If you have any questions about certain aspects of the build, leave them in the comments and I'd be happy to respond, or maybe in a future episode I can mention how I came up with it. There's a bunch of different building techniques crammed into this video. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe for more videos coming soon, and until next time.